Long before the first roads were drawn, humanity's original atlas was written in starlight. This is the story of the first celestial maps, our earliest attempts to chart the unknown using only the night sky. You will discover how ancient stargazers transformed myth into geography and built the foundations of modern science. What drove cultures across the globe to invest so deeply in mapping the stars, and what hidden knowledge did they encode in these cosmic blueprints? How does the human need to map the world around us begin with the sky above? The celestial sphere was humanity's first and most enduring global positioning system. For our earliest ancestors, survival was woven into the fabric of the night. They watched the heavens not as passive spectators, but as active participants in a cosmic dance that dictated the rhythms of life on Earth. On the vast African plains, a notch carved into a piece of bone might mark the return of a specific star cluster, signaling the movement of great herds. On remote Pacific islands, the first sighting of the Pleiades on the horizon could tell fishermen when to launch their canoes. This was not mere stargazing, it was a fundamental dialogue with the universe, a way of translating celestial motion into terrestrial action. The critical leap occurred when these observations shifted from passive watching to active recording. Marking a stone, remembering a story, or painting a symbol on a cave wall transformed a fleeting event into permanent data. This was the cognitive spark that ignited astronomy. By systematically tracking the sun's path, the moon's phases, and the wanderings of planets, they began to see the underlying order. They were no longer simply living under the sky, they were reading its grand, predictable clockwork. This foundational skill of celestial observation, born from the need to know when to plant and when to migrate, laid the essential groundwork for every map that would ever be drawn. It was the first step in a journey that would one day see humans using those same stars to navigate trackless oceans. This celestial clockwork evolved into a grander, more profound idea. Ancient cultures around the world came to a singular, powerful conclusion that the sky was a perfect mirror of the earth. They looked up and saw not a separate realm, but a direct reflection of their own world, a celestial blueprint etched in starlight. This principle, often called as above, so below, meant that every constellation was more than a picture, it was a symbolic map. A winding river of stars might chart the course of a great terrestrial river below. A cluster of bright stars could mark the boundaries of a tribe's sacred hunting grounds, or represent the spiritual realm where ancestors resided. The sky became a cosmic cartogram, a vast, luminous chart of everything they knew and everything they had yet to discover. We find one of the most profound examples of this in the ancient knowledge systems of Aboriginal Australians. For them, the land itself was sung into existence during the dream time, and the pathways of these creation ancestors were encoded in the stars. These are the Songlines, a living navigation system that intertwines terrestrial geography with celestial mythology. A traveler would not just follow a physical trail, they would sing the song of the land, a song whose verses were linked to specific stars and constellations rising and setting on the horizon. To walk the earth was to trace a pattern in the heavens, and to read the night sky was to know your precise location in a vast, storied landscape. The map was not drawn on parchment, it was woven into the very fabric of their oral tradition and written in the stars above. This mirroring effect provided the ultimate rationale for mapping the cosmos. If you wanted to understand the unknown parts of your own world, to find your way across a trackless desert or a featureless sea, the most reliable guide was the celestial map hanging overhead. The stars gave them a fixed, predictable framework onto which they could project the shifting, uncertain details of the terrestrial realm. But turning this philosophical concept into a practical tool required more than just observation. It demanded a new kind of language, a way to permanently capture the dance of the heavens. These celestial patterns demanded a new language, one that could make the silent stars speak. This language was mythology. The stars were far more than mere points of light. They were the eternal characters in a grand, universal narrative played out across the heavens. Gods, heroes, and mythical beasts were projected onto the constellations, transforming the sky into a vast mythological cartogram. This was not a flight of fancy, but a sophisticated mnemonic system. The complex and seemingly random arrangement of stars became dynamic, memorable, and profoundly easier to teach when it was tied to a compelling story. Consider the constellation of Orion. Without its story, it is simply a collection of bright stars. But when you know the tale of the mighty hunter, forever pursuing the Pleiades across the sky, that pattern instantly locks into memory. The entire shape, its position, and its seasonal movements are now encoded in a narrative. As one classicist notes, Greek mythology is not merely illustrated in the night sky, it is deeply encoded there. Each constellation is a chapter, each planetary motion a plot twist in an epic written in starlight. This fusion of story and science was a powerful instrument for preserving knowledge. A skilled navigator or elder did not need a written chart. They needed only to recall the story of Orion to remember a specific celestial configuration that signaled the coming of winter or the best time for a sea voyage. The narrative itself became the map, a portable, unforgettable guide that could be passed down through countless generations. This mythological framework turned abstract astronomy into a living, breathing geography of the cosmos, where every star had a name and every constellation held a lesson. But to move from these story maps to a truly predictive science, humanity needed to invent a new kind of tool, one that could measure the very heartbeat of the heavens. The transition from myth to measurement is etched into bone and stone. Among the earliest and most debated of these artifacts is the Ishango bone, discovered in the Congo. This simple baboon fibula, dating back over 20,000 years, is carved with a series of distinct grouped notches. To the untrained eye, they appear random, but to a paleoarchaeologist, they whisper of a profound intellectual leap. The markings are arranged in columns, with one column showing prime numbers between 10 and 20, and another seemingly following a lunar cycle. This was likely more than a tally stick. It was a sophisticated mathematical and astronomical record, a concrete attempt to track the phases of the moon and perhaps even predict its rhythms. The individual who carved this bone was not just counting days, they were capturing time itself, using the moon as their constant celestial metronome. This drive to record the heavens in stone reaches a monumental scale at sites like Nabta Playa in the Sahara. Here, around 7,000 years ago, a community of cattle herders arranged massive stones into lines and circles. These are not random piles, they are a complex calendar aligned with breathtaking precision. Key stones point directly toward the rising point of the star Sirius and the sun at the summer solstice. This was a full-scale observatory carved into the desert floor, a permanent stone chronicle of the sky's most important events. The construction itself reveals a deep understanding of engineering and collective purpose. Moving these multi-ton megaliths required a coordinated society, one that saw the value in building a lasting, communal clock that used the horizon and the stars as its dial and hands. But what was the purpose of these intricate devices? Were they the exclusive tools of a priestly class, used to dictate the timing of sacred rituals and consolidate power through celestial knowledge? Or were they practical guides for the entire community, signaling to hunters the migration patterns of game, or to herders the coming of the rainy season? The truth likely lies in a combination of both. The Ishango bone, small and portable, could have been a personal aid memoir for a skilled observer. The vast complex at Nabta Playa, however, speaks to a shared celestial knowledge that structured an entire culture's relationship with time, nature, and the divine. These objects are the tangible proof of a crucial evolution. Humanity was no longer just watching the sky, it was building a physical, durable interface with the cosmos. This was the birth of the calendar and the clock, all derived from that primal need to map the stars. Yet these earthbound observatories had their limits. They were fixed in place, their views confined to a single horizon. To truly conquer the unknown, this celestial knowledge needed to become mobile, to guide travelers across trackless seas and vast, empty deserts. No civilization fused the celestial and the terrestrial more completely than ancient Egypt. Their entire society, from the flooding of the Nile to the journey of the pharaoh's soul, was choreographed by the stars. This cosmic blueprint was meticulously recorded in places of eternal rest, transforming tombs into permanent celestial guides. Inside the lids of wooden coffins from the Middle Kingdom, archaeologists have discovered intricate star clocks. These were not simple diagrams but functional timekeeping devices. They charted the risings of 36 specific star groups known as decans. Each decan would appear on the horizon for a period of 10 days, marking an Egyptian week before being replaced by the next in sequence. Over the course of a single night, a priest or astronomer could tell the time by observing which of these decanal stars was crossing the meridian, a line from due north to due south directly overhead. This system divided the night into 12 equal parts, a practice that would eventually influence our own 24-hour day. But these maps were for more than telling time in the land of the living. They were passports for the dead. In the tomb of the royal architect Senenmut, the ceiling explodes into a breathtaking celestial panorama. The northern constellations we recognize, like the Plough and Draco, are depicted as gods and sacred animals. A separate panel details the decans, and the planets are shown as celestial birds sailing their eternal paths. This was a master copy of the sky, a permanent, painted star chart intended to guide Senenmut's spirit. As one prominent Egyptologist explains, the Egyptians believed the deceased pharaoh's soul would need to navigate this cosmic river to reach the imperishable stars and join the gods Osiris and Orion in an eternal afterlife. The funerary texts we call the Book of the Dead are filled with spells to help the soul avoid celestial pitfalls and recognize the correct stellar pathways. This was the ultimate purpose of their star maps, to provide a guaranteed route to immortality. Yet this profound spiritual reliance on the stars was matched by an equally critical earthly dependence. The most important celestial event of the Egyptian year was the heliacal rising of the star Sirius, which they called Soptet. After a period of invisibility, Sirius would reappear just before dawn in the eastern sky. This single, brilliant moment consistently heralded the imminent, life-giving flood of the Nile River. The entire Egyptian agricultural cycle, and thus the survival of the civilization, was set by this star's clockwork return. The inundation would deposit rich, fertile silt across the farmlands, guaranteeing a bountiful harvest. Their calendar was fundamentally a Sirius-based calendar, with the new year beginning precisely with this celestial event. The Egyptians did not see a separation between the spiritual and the practical. The same star that guided their pharaohs to paradise also told their farmers when to prepare for the flood. This seamless integration of cosmic observation, divine kingship, and agricultural survival demonstrates a level of celestial mapping unmatched in the ancient world. Their maps were not just charts, they were the very operating system of their civilization. While the Egyptians painted stars for the afterlife, another civilization was pressing them into the wet clay of the here and now. In the Fertile Crescent between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Babylonians and Sumerians forged a new kind of celestial science, one built not on myth alone, but on mathematics. Their laboratory was the sky, and their data storage was the humble clay tablet, inscribed with the wedge-shaped marks of cuneiform. It is from these fragile, sun-baked records that we have recovered some of the most important documents in the history of astronomy, texts that reveal a mind-boggling leap in precision and predictive power. The most comprehensive of these is a series of tablets known as the Mul.Apin, a virtual encyclopedia of the ancient sky. Compiled around 1,000 years before the Common Era, it meticulously lists over 60 stars and constellations, charts the paths of the planets, and establishes fixed rules for a calendar based on the heliacal risings of key stars. But the Mul.Apin's most enduring legacy was its clear definition of a band of constellations that the sun, moon, and planets all traveled through. They called this path the Way of Anu, and we know it today as the Zodiac. This was the fundamental breakthrough, the recognition of the ecliptic as a celestial highway, a structured coordinate system against which all motion could be measured. This systematic observation was not driven by pure curiosity, but by a profound and pervasive belief that the heavens were the direct writing of the gods. Every celestial event, from a planetary conjunction to a lunar eclipse, was an omen, a divine message foretelling the fate of the king and the kingdom. A scholar known as a scribe or a Tupshar Enuma Anu Enlil would scan the sky, tablet in hand, searching for these portents. If Mars approached the constellation of Scorpio, it might signal an impending war. If the moon was eclipsed, it could be a dire warning of a king's illness or a foreign invasion. This omen-based astrology was the primary engine of their astronomical research. The need to anticipate the gods' messages provided an immense cultural and financial incentive to find patterns in the chaos, to transform celestial whim into predictable law. This urgent need for prediction led them to their greatest intellectual achievement, the birth of mathematical astronomy. They began to detect repeating cycles, noticing, for instance, that lunar eclipses tended to recur in a pattern every 18 years, a period now known as the Saros cycle. With this realization, they moved beyond mere observation and into the realm of calculation. They developed sophisticated mathematical techniques, using what we now call arithmetic progressions, to model the changing speed of the sun and moon across the sky. They were no longer just recording what the gods did, they were building mathematical models to forecast what the gods would do next. This was a quantum leap in human thought. It was the moment celestial mapping evolved from a symbolic guide for souls and seasons into a precise, data-driven science capable of peering into the future. The Babylonian clay tablets, created to read the whims of gods, ultimately laid the unshakable foundation for the entire scientific tradition of astronomy that would follow, a foundation built on numbers, not just narratives. While Babylonian scholars pressed numbers into clay, another culture was charting a different kind of map, one written not on any physical surface, but etched into the living memory of master navigators. They looked upon the same stars and saw not omens of kings, but a compass for crossing the greatest wilderness on Earth, the open Pacific Ocean. For the Polynesian voyagers, the entire cosmos was a dynamic, rotating sphere, and their canoe was the fixed point at its very center. They did not use instruments, they used the world itself. The ocean swells became rolling highways, the flight patterns of birds pointed toward unseen islands, and the feel of the wind on the cheek spoke volumes. But the true backbone of their navigation was a mental construct of breathtaking elegance, the star compass. Imagine the horizon as a great circle surrounding your canoe, divided not into degrees but into 32 directional houses, much like the points on a mariner's compass. Each house was named, and each was associated with the specific rising and setting points of key stars. The house of Heliacal, for instance, was marked by the rise of the star Sirius. As the night progressed and the celestial sphere turned, a new star would rise from that same house, then another and another, creating a celestial conveyor belt of directional guides. A navigator or wayfinder would sleep in short bursts, waking to check which star was rising from which house, constantly recalibrating their mental bearing. This was not a static picture, but a fluid, ever-changing mental model that required the navigator to hold the entire sky in their mind's eye, even during the day. One of the most brilliant techniques involved zenith stars. A wayfinder sailing from Tahiti to Hawaii knew that the island of Hawaii lay directly beneath a specific star, one that would pass directly overhead at its zenith when they reached their destination. As they sailed north, they would watch for that star to climb higher and higher in the night sky. When it finally passed directly over the mast of their canoe, they knew they had reached the correct latitude. They had, in effect, sailed directly under their celestial landmark. This knowledge was not written down. It was preserved through an unbroken chain of oral tradition, sung in chants and practiced on the water from childhood. This sacred art, nearly lost to history, has been dramatically revived by modern Hawaiian navigators like the late master wayfinder Maupiailuk. In 1976, he captained the replica double-hulled canoe, the Hokula, on a voyage from Hawaii to Tahiti without the use of any modern instruments. For over a month, he guided the vessel across 2,500 miles of open ocean, using only the ancient star compass, the swells, and the stars. His success was a powerful reclaiming of ancestral knowledge, proving that the most sophisticated map is not always made of parchment or stone. It can be a living, breathing cartography carried within the human mind, a perfect fusion of sky, sea, and memory that allowed humanity to conquer the planet's final frontiers. In ancient China, the night sky was a state secret, and reading it correctly was a matter of imperial survival. The emperor's authority rested on the mandate of heaven, a divine right to rule that was not inherited but earned through virtuous conduct. The stars were the ultimate report card. If the heavens showed disorder, it was a clear sign that the emperor had lost that mandate, and rebellion was justified. This belief transformed astronomy from a scholarly pursuit into the most critical function of the state. The entire cosmos was systematically organized into a celestial bureaucracy that mirrored the imperial court on Earth. The North Star was the supreme palace, the unchanging seat of the celestial emperor. The surrounding constellations became his ministries, palaces, and armies. There was the Eastern Market, the Imperial Guards, and even a celestial prison. This was not mythology in the Greek sense, but a direct cosmological model of the Chinese Empire itself, a perfect, heavenly duplicate of the imperial order. At the heart of this system was the imperial astronomer, a high-ranking official whose observatory was built within the palace walls. His duty was constant vigilance. Every night, he and his team scanned the heavens for any anomaly, any deviation from the perfect celestial order. A comet, which they called a broom star, was seen as heaven sweeping away a corrupt dynasty. A planetary conjunction in the wrong constellation could foretell the death of a minister. A lunar eclipse was a dire warning that the emperor's virtue was failing. The records of the Grand Historian, compiled by Sima Qian around 100 BC, explicitly states that when the ruler is unwise and fails to reward the worthy, then the sun will be eclipsed. The Imperial astronomers' reports carried immense political weight, and a failure to predict an event like an eclipse could cost him his life. This immense pressure for accuracy led to one of the most remarkable legacies of Chinese astronomy, their meticulous chronicles of celestial events. They recorded sunspots, calling them black spots within the sun, centuries before they were observed in Europe. Most astonishing were their records of guest stars, sudden, brilliant points of light that appeared where none had been before, lingered for months, and then faded away. We now know these were supernova. One such record from 1054 AD details a guest star so bright it was visible in daylight for 23 days. Modern radio astronomers have identified the remnant of that explosion, the Crab Nebula, and the Chinese data provides a precise date and location that is invaluable to science today. This unique fusion of cosmology and statecraft created a map of the sky that was unparalleled in its bureaucratic detail. It was a map designed not for sailors to navigate oceans, but for emperors to navigate the treacherous waters of political power, proving that the stars could dictate the fate of dynasties as easily as they guided ships to shore. The Greek synthesis transformed starlight into geometry. They absorbed the detailed observations of the Babylonians and the symbolic maps of the Egyptians, then asked a new kind of question. They sought not just to predict celestial events or to appease the gods, but to understand the fundamental structure of the cosmos itself. Their revolutionary tool for this quest was geometry, and their central concept was the celestial sphere. Imagine the entire night sky as a vast, hollow globe with our fixed, central Earth at its very heart. Every star was a point of light fixed to the inner surface of this slowly spinning sphere. This elegant model, though ultimately wrong about the Earth's central place, was a breathtaking intellectual achievement. It provided the first truly geometric framework for the universe, a coordinate system that could precisely map the position and movement of every celestial body. This was the moment the sky ceased to be just a story and became a mathematical problem to be solved. The poet Aratus captured this transition beautifully in his work, The Phenomena. He took the old constellation myths and rendered them in verse, but his descriptions were not merely poetic. They were precise, almost technical, translating the shapes of the constellations into a form that was both memorable and useful for tracking the seasons. His work became a bridge carrying the ancient star lore into the new age of Greek science, but it was the mathematician Eudoxus of Cnidus who truly built the geometry of the heavens. He created the first known spherical star catalogue, a system of 27 concentric spheres, each rotating on a different axis, designed to explain the complex motions of the planets against the fixed backdrop of stars. His model was intricate, a cosmic clockwork of incredible complexity. While it could not perfectly predict every planetary loop and pause, its power lay in the attempt itself. Eudoxus was not content with just describing what he saw. He was determined to build a physical, geometrical model that could explain why the heavens moved as they did. This shift from narrative to geometry marks one of the most critical turning points in human history. The Greek astronomers began to measure the sky quantitatively, seeking numerical relationships and geometric proofs. They were laying down a new kind of foundation, one built not on clay or stone, but on the immutable laws of mathematics. This rigorous, geometric approach to the cosmos would provide the essential groundwork for the revolutionary work of Hipparchus, who would create the first comprehensive star catalogue, and later for Ptolemy, whose grand synthesis would dominate astronomy for over 1,000 years. The stars were no longer just guides for sailors or omens for kings. They had become points on a cosmic grid, waiting for their true distances to be revealed. The geometric dreams of the Greeks found their ultimate cartographer in the city of Alexandria. There, in the 2nd century, Claudius Ptolemy compiled a work of such staggering scope and precision that it would become the absolute authority on the cosmos for over 1,000 years. His great book, known to us as the Almagest, was far more than a star catalogue. It was a complete operating manual for the universe. Within its pages, Ptolemy systematically charted 1,022 stars, assigning each a precise position using a coordinate system based on the ecliptic, the sun's apparent path through the zodiac. He also classified their brightness into 6 distinct grades, a scale of magnitude we still use in a modified form today. One can almost hear the meticulous tone of the text itself, which instructs the observer to always use the same instrument and to make observations on clear, moonless nights to ensure consistency. This was a new standard of scientific rigor, a celestial census of unprecedented detail. But Ptolemy's true genius lay in the model he built to contain all this data. He inherited the problem of the planets, whose strange loops and pauses defied the simple idea of uniform circular motion around a central Earth. His brilliant, if complex, solution was a universe of circles upon circles. He placed each planet on a small circle called an epicycle, the center of which itself traveled along a larger circle called a deferent, all while orbiting a slightly off-center Earth. This intricate dance of epicycles and deferents could mathematically reproduce the observed retrograde motion, creating a predictive machine of remarkable accuracy. The Ptolemaic universe was a masterwork of engineering, a cosmic clockwork that could forecast planetary positions with a precision that satisfied both the needs of science and the human desire for order. For 14 centuries, this geocentric map was the cosmos. It was a system so complete, so logically compelling, and so functionally effective that it became nearly unassailable. It guided Arab astronomers who preserved and refined its tables, and it structured the medieval European worldview, placing humanity at the heart of a divine, mathematically ordered creation. Ptolemy had not merely mapped the stars, he had built a conceptual cage for them, a magnificent and enduring prison of thought that would require nothing less than a revolution to shatter. Ptolemy's cosmic cage, for all its grandeur, was not a perfect prison. Its bars were mathematical, and over centuries, tiny errors began to accumulate, like a clock losing a second each day. While much of Europe descended into intellectual darkness, a new center of learning was rising in the East, a place dedicated not to tearing down the old maps, but to perfecting them. In the bustling capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, the city of Baghdad, the House of Wisdom became a beacon of science. Here, under the patronage of enlightened rulers, a legion of scholars, translators, and astronomers took up the torch of ancient knowledge. They did not see Greek science as a finished work, but as a magnificent foundation upon which to build something even greater. Their mission was one of preservation, correction, and innovation, fueled by an insatiable desire to measure the heavens with a new level of precision. The star charts of Claudius Ptolemy were translated into Arabic, scrutinized, and then systematically tested against the clear desert skies. These astronomers were the first true peer reviewers of the Almagest, and they found it wanting. They corrected his estimates for the length of the year, the precession of the equinoxes, and even the size of the Earth. They built grand observatories like the one at Maragha, equipped with massive quadrants and mural arcs that could track a star's path with breathtaking accuracy. This was not merely academic, it was a spiritual and practical necessity. The Islamic faith required precise times for the 5 daily prayers, which shifted with the sun's position, and a calendar to mark the holy month of Ramadan. The astrolabe, a handheld brass model of the universe, became their ultimate tool. A skilled user could hold this intricate device up to the sky and tell the time, calculate prayer times, or even determine their latitude. It was a portable cosmos, a masterpiece of engineering that brought the power of the stars into the palm of one's hand. The pinnacle of this celestial cartography came from the astronomer Al-Sufi. His book of fixed stars was a masterpiece of synthesis. He took Ptolemy's star catalogue and painstakingly updated it, reconciling the Greek constellations with the rich tradition of Arabic folk astronomy. He provided 2 illustrations for every constellation, one as seen from Earth and another as seen on a celestial globe, a revolutionary approach, and on his chart of Andromeda, he noted a small, nebulous smear, a little cloud. This was the first recorded mention of the Andromeda Galaxy, a distant island of stars invisible to the naked eye until millennia later. Islamic astronomers were not just keepers of a flame, they were master cartographers who recalibrated the entire map of the heavens. They built the essential bridge of knowledge, carrying the wisdom of antiquity across the centuries and handing it, refined and expanded, to a Europe that was finally ready to wake up. This perfected sky, now measured with unprecedented rigor, would soon face its greatest challenge, a single, revolutionary idea that would shatter the celestial spheres and place the sun at the center of everything. While Islamic astronomers perfected their brass astrolabes, a vastly different kind of map was being drawn in the scriptoriums of medieval Europe. Here, the cosmos was not a mechanism to be measured, but a divine text to be contemplated. The great Mappa Mundi, like the famous one in Hereford Cathedral, presented a world centered on Jerusalem, a flat disk encircled by a single ocean and enclosed by a crystalline sphere of fixed stars. The heavens were not a separate scientific domain, but the outermost frame of a sacred diagram, the very vault of God's creation. This was celestial cartography in the service of salvation, where every star was a testament to divine order, not a point on a geometric grid. You would not use this map to sail a ship, but you might use it to save your soul, tracing the path from earthly sin to heavenly grace. This symbolic approach extended from the macrocosm of the universe to the microcosm of the human body. In countless manuscripts, physicians and monks drew the Zodiac man, a startling illustration that mapped the 12 signs of the zodiac directly onto a human figure. Aries governed the head, Taurus the neck, and so on down to the feet, which were ruled by Pisces. This was not mere superstition. It was a foundational principle of medieval medicine. A monastic scribe might note in the margin of a text that one must never perform bloodletting on a part of the body when the moon was passing through its ruling zodiac sign, for it could weaken the patient or cause incurable harm. The body itself was a tiny reflection of the cosmic order, and its health was inextricably linked to the movements of the celestial spheres. This worldview, known as scholasticism, sought to reconcile faith with reason, but its primary source of truth was always divine revelation, not empirical observation. The stars were placed in the sky by God as signs, and the purpose of a star map was to illuminate their spiritual meaning, not to calculate their positions. This created a fascinating divergence in the history of science. While other cultures were refining predictive models and navigation tools, European celestial cartography for centuries remained a beautiful, intricate, and symbolic art, designed to inspire awe and reinforce dogma. This perspective, however, could not hold forever. The very parchment that bore these sacred maps would soon feel the tremors of a revolution, one that would begin not with a new observation of the heavens, but with a radical new map of the earth. Far across the Atlantic, entire cosmologies were being written in the stars, completely isolated from the debates of Europe and the calculations of Baghdad. In the dense rainforests of Mesoamerica, the Maya built a civilization whose very heartbeat was synchronized with the cosmos. Their obsession with time led them to create a calendar system of staggering complexity, a series of interlocking cycles that could measure vast epochs with pinpoint accuracy. At its core was the 260-day sacred round, used for divination and ritual, layered with the 365-day solar year. But their true mathematical genius is revealed in the long count, a linear calendar that allowed them to track time over millennia. They calculated the solar year to be 365.2420 days, a figure more accurate than the Gregorian calendar used in Europe at the time of first contact. This was not abstract math, it was a tool for anchoring their world to the unshakable rhythms of the universe. Their celestial mapping, however, reached its zenith with the planet Venus. They tracked its 584-day cycle with such precision that their forecast for its appearances in the sky was off by only a single day in 500 years. Yet for the Maya, Venus was not a beautiful evening star, it was a harbinger of war. They knew it as Noek, the great star, and associated it with the god Kukulkan. When Venus reappeared as the morning star after a period of invisibility, its rising was seen as an ill omen, a time of potential chaos and conflict. Historical records from carved stelae suggest that Maya rulers often planned their military campaigns to coincide with specific phases of Venus, launching attacks under the star's perceived influence to ensure divine favor. This fusion of astronomical precision and martial strategy shows a culture that saw the celestial and the terrestrial as a single, interconnected battlefield. You can still see this cosmic engineering etched in stone at Chichen Itza. The strange spiral tower known as El Caracol is now understood by archaeoastronomers to be a sophisticated observatory. Its narrow, slit-like windows are precisely aligned with the extreme rising and setting points of Venus on the horizon. A ruler or priest would have stood inside this stone instrument, watching as the light of the great star pierced the darkness through a specific aperture, signaling the time for a sacred ceremony or the launch of a raid. The sky was a dynamic, living text, and the Maya were its most diligent and fearful readers. High in the Andes, the Inca wove the sky into the very fabric of their empire using a different kind of map, one drawn not on parchment but across the sacred landscape. From the Coricancha, the temple of the sun at the center of their capital, Cusco, 41 invisible lines called secs radiated outward like spokes on a wheel. Each sec was a sightline connecting the temple to specific huacas, or sacred shrines, on the distant horizon. These huacas could be anything from a spring or a cave to a curiously shaped rock or a mountain peak. This system was far more than a religious directory. It was a colossal calendar and a celestial observatory built into the land itself. Certain huacas acted as foresights, marking the rising or setting positions of the sun, moon, and key stars at critical times of the year, such as the June and December solstices. The sec system organized everything, from the scheduling of imperial festivals and agricultural cycles to the allocation of water rights and labor duties for the 4 quarters of the empire. The sky and the earth were locked together in a single, grand design of social and cosmic order. The Inca further refined their celestial observations with specially designed pillars on the horizons around Cusco. These pillars, now lost to time, were used to track the sun's approach to the solstices, allowing priests to mark the exact day when the sun stopped its journey north or south and began its return. For a civilization that worshipped the sun god in Tai, this was a moment of profound importance, a reassurance that the cosmic order was intact and that the source of all life would not abandon them. The Spanish chronicler Garcilaso de la Vega recorded that the precision of these observations was so great that they could identify the exact day of the solstice, a feat that required immense patience and skill. The Sex transformed the entire valley of Cusco into a living, breathing star chart, where the rhythms of the heavens were mirrored by the rituals of the state, proving that a map of the cosmos could also be the blueprint for an empire. These parallel visions from the Americas reveal a profound truth about our species. Separated by vast oceans, the Maya and the Inca arrived at complex understandings of the cosmos that were in many ways more integrated with daily life than those of the Old World. They did not need telescopes or written star catalogues. They built their observatories from the world itself and encoded their knowledge in architecture and landscape. The universal human drive to find order in the heavens, to map the unknown, and to seek meaning in the stars is not a story of one civilization, but of many. Each culture looked up and saw a different reflection of itself, a different blueprint for existence written in the same shared sky. This independent development underscores a fundamental quest, a deep-seated need to chart our place in the universe, a need that would soon propel one final, audacious synthesis of all this accumulated knowledge, a map so revolutionary it would change our position in the cosmos forever. A new kind of alchemy began in the print shops of 15th century Europe, one that turned wood and ink into portable universes. Before the printing press, a star chart was a singular treasure, painstakingly copied by hand on precious vellum, locked away in a monastery or a prince's library. Johannes Gutenberg's invention changed all that. It broke the celestial sphere out of its gilded cage and sent it out into the world, transforming stargazing from an elite pursuit into a practical, widespread skill. The German astronomer Regiomontanus was among the first to seize this new power. His printed astronomical calendars and ephemerides, rolling off the press in the 1470s, were not beautiful works of art. They were dense, data-rich tables of planetary positions, but their very existence was revolutionary. For the first time, any student, any ship's captain with the means to buy a pamphlet, could own a precise, reliable forecast of the heavens. This was the beginning of the democratization of the cosmos. The true artistic pinnacle of this revolution arrived in 1515 from the workshop of the master artist Albrecht Dürer. He collaborated with astronomers to produce the first printed star charts of the northern and southern hemispheres. These were magnificent works, but they were also a feat of immense technical translation. Dürer's team had to reverse the entire sky. A hand-painted celestial globe shows the constellations as they appear from the outside, looking in. To create a flat, printed map that you hold in your hands and look down upon, they had to meticulously flip every figure, turning the celestial sphere inside out. They then carved these reversed images in intricate detail onto wood blocks. The process was unforgiving. A single slip of the carving tool could ruin weeks of work and force the creation of an entirely new block. The resulting maps are breathtaking. The constellation figures are rendered with the muscular dynamism of the Renaissance, yet they are framed by a precise coordinate grid of ecliptic longitude and latitude. Here was the Greek geometric sky, the Babylonian Zodiac, and the medieval mythological figures, all standardized and locked into a single, reproducible image. This mass production of the sky had a profound and unexpected consequence. It created a common visual language for astronomers across Europe. Before printed charts, a constellation like Hercules might be drawn in a dozen different ways depending on the artist's whim or local tradition. But once Dürer's map was circulated by the thousands, his depiction of Hercules became the Hercules. This standardization was crucial for the growth of a scientific community. An astronomer in Poland and a navigator in Portugal could now look at the same printed chart, refer to the same stars by the same names, and know they were discussing the same point of light in the vast darkness. It allowed for the precise communication of new discoveries, like a sudden comet or a nova, because everyone was working from the same base map. The printed cosmos became a shared reference work, a collaborative tool that accelerated the pace of discovery. The impact rippled far beyond academic circles, directly into the hands of a new class of ambitious merchants and explorers. For the price of a printed map and a simple wooden astrolabe, a ship's captain could now carry a reliable guide to the heavens. He could teach his crew to recognize the key navigational stars, to track their course using the printed charts. This accessibility fueled the age of exploration, putting the celestial knowledge once reserved for kings and master navigators onto the decks of common trading vessels. It was a shift in power as significant as any political revolution. The ability to print the cosmos did not just spread information, it empowered ordinary people to venture into the unknown with confidence, their path lit by the mass-produced light of the stars. This great dissemination of knowledge cleared the way for the next great leap, a leap that would require not just better maps, but a fundamental reimagining of the universe itself. Yet the printed sky that Dürer had so beautifully standardized was still fundamentally Ptolemy's sky, a universe centered upon the Earth. This entire cosmic map was about to be torn in two by a quiet cannon from Poland. Nicolaus Copernicus did not set out to start a revolution, but to fix a broken clock. For decades, he had wrestled with the Ptolemaic system, its cumbersome epicycles and equants failing to perfectly predict planetary positions. His solution, detailed in his masterwork on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres, was at once brilliantly simple and profoundly shocking. He proposed a universe with the sun, not the earth, at its center. In his own cautious words, he wrote that it is at the center of all things that the sun resides, for in this most beautiful temple, who could place this lamp in another or better place than that from which it can illuminate the whole at one time. This was not just a new theory, it was a demand for a complete celestial remapping from the ground up. The immediate scientific appeal was elegance. The perplexing retrograde loops of Mars and Jupiter were suddenly explained not by complex epicycles, but by the simple fact that the Earth, now a moving planet itself, was overtaking them in their own, slower orbits around the Sun. The celestial clockwork became instantly cleaner, more harmonious, but this beautiful simplification came with a terrifying price. If the Earth was truly orbiting the Sun, then over the course of 6 months, our position in space should change by millions of miles. From these two vastly different vantage points, the nearer stars should appear to shift their positions slightly against the backdrop of more distant stars, an effect called stellar parallax. Copernicus and his contemporaries looked for this shift and found nothing. The stars remained fixed, their positions unwavering. This was the model's greatest weakness. Copernicus could only conclude that the universe was unimaginably vast, that the distance to the stars was so great that this parallax shift was too tiny for any instrument of his age to detect. He was correct, of course, but in his time this was an unbelievable stretch, a leap of faith into a cosmos of terrifying emptiness. The resistance to his idea was not merely scientific, it was deeply philosophical and psychological. For over a millennium, humanity had seen itself as the literal center of God's creation. The entire cosmos, from the moon to the fixed stars, was believed to have been made for humanity. The Copernican model dismantled this anthropocentric universe. It turned the Earth from the sacred stage of divine drama into just another rock, one of several, spinning through an indifferent void. This was a philosophical earthquake that shook the foundations of theology, art, and human self-worth. To accept this new map was to accept a profound demotion, to acknowledge that we were not the pivot point around which all creation turned. Copernicus himself was so aware of the upheaval his book would cause that he delayed its publication for decades, and legend holds he only held the printed copy on his deathbed. His work did not immediately convince the world, but it irrevocably broke the old celestial sphere. It planted a seed of cosmic doubt, forcing the next generation of astronomers to look at the sky with new eyes, to search for the evidence that would confirm we were living on a moving world, adrift in a sun-centered sea of stars. A metal nose and a pet moose were the least remarkable things about the man who would map the heavens with his bare eyes. Tycho Brahe was a force of nature, a Danish nobleman whose temper was as legendary as his astronomical genius. After witnessing a solar eclipse as a student, he dedicated his life to a single, monumental task to create a perfect record of the sky. His king granted him the island of Etched, and there Tycho built his fortress of science, Uraniborg, a palace complete with its own printing press, paper mill, and even a jail for unruly servants. This was not merely an observatory, it was a factory for data, and its product was unprecedented precision. Tycho understood that the old star catalogues were riddled with errors, sometimes off by entire degrees. He knew that to choose between the systems of Ptolemy and Copernicus, he needed a new standard of accuracy, and he would achieve it not with a new theory, but with better tools. His workshop produced colossal brass instruments, each a masterpiece of craftsmanship. The giant mural quadrant was a masterpiece, a brass arc fixed to a north-south wall spanning 14 feet. An observer would sight a star through a small window along one wall, while an assistant would read its altitude from a scale marked on the quadrant's arc with incredible fineness. Tycho's secret was repetition. He did not trust a single measurement. He and his team would observe the same star night after night, year after year, compiling a mountain of data that allowed them to average out tiny errors and pin down a star's position to within 1 arcminute, a 60th of a single degree. To put that in perspective, that is like measuring the width of a coin from nearly 2 miles away using only the naked eye. His logs reveal this obsessive rigor, filled with notes on atmospheric conditions, instrument calibration, and the exact time of each sighting. This painstaking work resulted in a star catalogue of over 1,000 stars, each plotted with a level of accuracy that would not be surpassed for centuries. Yet for all his empirical genius, Tycho's own cosmology was a compromise. He could not accept Copernicus's moving Earth, for he could detect no stellar parallax, but he also saw the elegance of having the planets orbit the Sun. His solution was the Tychonic system, a hybrid universe where the Sun and Moon orbited a stationary Earth, while all the other planets orbited the Sun. It was a clever, if complex, attempt to keep the Earth central while incorporating the mathematical benefits of a sun-centered arrangement. This brilliant, contradictory man, who dueled over a mathematical formula and died from a burst bladder after a banquet, left behind a conflicted legacy but an undeniable treasure, a vault of celestial data so precise it was like a finely cut key. That key would be handed to his brilliant, temperamental assistant, a man named Johannes Kepler, who would use Tycho's numbers to unlock the true shape of the solar system. Johannes Kepler inherited Tycho Brahe's treasure trove of data, a vault of numbers so precise they seemed to hold a secret. For years, he wrestled with the orbit of Mars, trying to force its path into the perfect circles that philosophy demanded. The numbers refused to cooperate. Tycho's observations were like a key that did not fit the ancient lock. In a moment of brilliant, painful necessity, Kepler let go of 2,000 years of dogma. He abandoned the circle, The true path of a planet, he discovered, was an ellipse, a stretched circle with the sun sitting at one of its two focal points. This was his first law of planetary motion, a heresy that shattered the crystalline spheres forever. The universe was not built on perfect, divine circles, but on a slightly lopsided geometry that perfectly matched the evidence. But Kepler did not stop there. He next asked how a planet moved along this elliptical path. Was its speed constant? The data again said no. He found that a planet speeds up as it swings closer to the sun and slows down as it moves away. Yet there was a beautiful consistency. An imaginary line connecting the planet to the sun will sweep out equal areas in equal amounts of time. This is his second law, the law of equal areas. Think of it like a cosmic pie chart. Whether the planet is near the sun, moving quickly across a short radius, or far away, moving slowly across a long radius, it carves out a slice of orbital area that is exactly the same size over the same period. This was not just a description, it was a dynamic principle, a hint of a physical force emanating from the sun itself. After a decade more of work, he unveiled his third and final law, a true harmony of the spheres. He found a precise mathematical relationship between a planet's distance from the sun and the time it takes to complete one orbit. Specifically, the square of a planet's orbital period is proportional to the cube of its average distance from the sun. This means you could, with a simple calculation, determine how far away Jupiter was from the sun simply by knowing how long its year lasted. The entire solar system was now bound together by a single, elegant equation. Kepler saw this not as a cold calculation, but as a divine melody. He wrote that the celestial machine is not so much a clockwork as a kind of divine living being. He had given the celestial map its engine. His laws explained not just where the planets were placed on the chart, but the very physics of their motion. They answered the how and the why, transforming a beautiful, static arrangement into a dynamic, predictable system governed by mathematical law. This was the final, critical piece that turned stargazing into celestial mechanics, providing the rules of motion for the next great mind who would ask what force could possibly be behind such perfect, elliptical orbits. Galileo Galilei's polished lenses did not just magnify the sky, they shattered it. In the winter of 1609, he first aimed his newly built spyglass, a simple tube with two pieces of glass, toward the moon. What he saw defied 2,000 years of philosophical certainty. This was no perfect, smooth celestial sphere. It was a world. His own words in the Starry Messenger describe a rough, uneven surface, crowded with vast cavities, bulging mountains, and deep valleys. He even estimated the height of a lunar peak by measuring the shadow it cast, proving it was a landscape as complex as any on Earth. This single observation struck a devastating blow to the Aristotelian cosmos, where the heavens were supposed to be made of perfect, unchanging quintessence. If the moon was a world, then perhaps the Earth was just a world among others. His telescope then swept across the planet Venus, revealing a revelation as subtle as it was conclusive. He watched the planet go through a complete set of phases, just like our moon, from a thin crescent to a full disk. In the Ptolemaic system, with Venus always positioned between the Earth and the Sun, it should only ever show a crescent phase. The fact that it showed a full phase meant only one thing: Venus was orbiting the Sun, not the Earth. Galileo wrote that he was led to the sure conclusion that this planet revolves around the Sun itself. Here was direct, visual proof of the Copernican arrangement, but perhaps his most stunning discovery came on January 7, 1610, when he looked at Jupiter. He saw three small, bright stars near the planet, arranged in a straight line. The next night they had moved. After a week of careful observation, he realized the truth. These were not stars, they were 4 moons orbiting Jupiter itself. He named them the Medicean stars in a clever bid for patronage, but their significance was cosmic. If moons could orbit another planet, then the Earth was not the unique center of all motion. The celestial script had been rewritten, and our planet was demoted from the central stage. Finally, he turned his instrument to the hazy band of the Milky Way. The nebulous glow resolved into a vast, unimaginable swarm of individual stars, countless thousands of them, far too faint for the naked eye to see. The universe, in an instant, had grown exponentially larger and more crowded. Every one of Galileo's discoveries conspired to dismantle the old cosmology. The moon's craters revealed imperfection, Venus' phases demanded a sun-centered orbit, Jupiter's moons demonstrated that centers of motion were not unique, and the starry depths of the Milky Way suggested a universe of staggering scale. The telescope had not merely added new details to the old map, it had set that map on fire, revealing a cosmos alive with dynamic physical worlds. This new reality demanded a new kind of cartographer, one who could not only chart these worlds but explain the force that bound them all together. The polished brass of a telescope's lens now offered a new standard of truth, but mapping its revelations required a different kind of endurance. 2 monumental figures, a brewer from Danzig and a clergyman from Derby, would dedicate their lives to compiling the first great modern star atlases, transforming a sky of scattered observations into a unified celestial geography. Johannes Hevelius, working from his lavishly equipped private observatory, represented the pinnacle of naked-eye astronomy. With instruments of breathtaking size and craftsmanship, he measured star positions to an accuracy that seemed to defy the limits of human vision. His life's work, the Firmamentum Sobiesianum, was more than a catalogue, it was a work of art. Each constellation was engraved with Baroque grandeur, mythical figures like Hercules and Cygnus rendered in dynamic, almost theatrical detail against a precise grid of celestial coordinates. Hevelius believed the human eye, guided by his massive sextants and quadrants, could achieve a purity that the telescope's narrow field of view might distort. He was charting the sky as it appeared to us in its full, majestic glory. His contemporary, John Flamsteed, the first Astronomer Royal of England, championed the new era of optics. From the Royal Observatory at Greenwich, founded explicitly to solve the problem of longitude for British sailors, Flamsteed pursued a different kind of precision. His Historia Celestis Britannica was a project of state-sponsored science, and he used telescopes to fix star positions with a rigor never before attempted. His catalogue listed over 3,000 stars, each painstakingly observed and recorded. Where Hevelius' atlas was a grand artistic statement, Flamsteed's was a utilitarian masterpiece, its cleaner, less flamboyant engvings designed for clarity and use. The tension between these two men was more than personal rivalry. It was a philosophical clash over the very tools of discovery. The famed astronomer Edmund Halley, who had visited both men, found himself caught in their dispute. Hevelius famously defended his methods, challenging Halley and Flamsteed to a test of accuracy, which he reportedly won, proving the enduring power of the human eye when paired with supreme skill. Yet history was on Flamsteed's side. The future belonged to the telescopic sight, and Flamsteed's data would become the bedrock for Newton's theories. These atlases, born from competition and obsession, served a world hungry for reliable maps. A naval captain plotting a course in the Atlantic, or a merchant sailor navigating the Indian Ocean, could now trust the printed star charts in their cabin. For the first time, the heavens were not just a spiritual guide or a scientific puzzle, but a standardized global utility. They were the culmination of every star map that had come before, from the bone notches of prehistory to the geometric spheres of the Greeks, now distilled into beautiful, practical volumes that anyone with training could use. They were the last great maps of the sky as seen from Earth, and the final blueprint before the universe exploded in scale. The very constellations that guided ancient sailors were not the eternal fixtures they appeared to be. For thousands of years, the stars formed a perfect, unmoving backdrop, the ultimate reference frame against which the planets danced. This foundational belief in a static sky was shattered not by a new telescope, but by an old book. In 1718, the astronomer Edmund Halley was comparing his own meticulous observations of the heavens with the star positions recorded by the Greek astronomers Hipparchus and Ptolemy nearly 2 millennia earlier. He noticed a series of tiny but undeniable discrepancies. 3 brilliant stars in particular, Sirius, Arcturus, and Aldebaran, were not in the places the ancient texts said they should be. The shifts were minuscule, less than the width of the full moon, but over such a vast gulf of time, they were statistically impossible to ignore. Halley had stumbled upon a profound truth. He called it the proper motion of the stars. The sky itself was slowly, imperceptibly drifting. The initial reaction from the scientific community was one of deep skepticism. Could the revered data of the ancients simply be flawed? Perhaps Ptolemy's measurements, for all their genius, were just not precise enough. Halley, however, was certain. He understood that the errors in the old catalogues were random, scattered in all directions. The shifts he detected for Sirius, Arcturus, and Aldebaran were coherent, all moving in the same general direction across the sky. This was not a mistake, it was a pattern. It was the signal of genuine motion. The cosmos, long imagined as a perfect, unchanging crystal sphere, was now revealed to be a dynamic and fluid reality. The fixed stars were not fixed at all. They were suns in their own right, each on its own journey through the void. Measuring this motion was a Herculean challenge. The angular shift for even the fastest-moving stars is incredibly small. It is like watching a snail crawl across a landscape from a distance of 10 miles. You would not perceive its movement from 1 minute to the next, or even from one day to the next. Only by comparing snapshots taken generations, or even centuries, apart could the gradual drift be detected. This required not just patience, but the preservation and trust of data across lifetimes. The cause of this proper motion is the actual velocity of stars through space. Each star has its own path, its own orbit around the center of our galaxy, and its own unique velocity relative to our solar system. While they appear fixed to our eyes, they are actually traveling at speeds of hundreds of thousands of miles per hour. From our distant viewpoint, these vast speeds translate into those barely perceptible creeps across the celestial sphere. Halley's discovery added a breathtaking new dimension to celestial cartography, the dimension of time. A star map was no longer an eternal truth, but a fleeting snapshot, a single frame in a cosmic film that unfolds over millennia. The familiar shapes of the constellations are not permanent. Given enough time, the Great Bear will slowly twist its shape, and Orion's belt will come undone. The sky our ancestors painted on their tomb ceilings and carved into their navigation sticks was a different sky than the one we see tonight, and it will be different again for our descendants tens of thousands of years from now. The maps we make are not just guides to the universe's geography, but also to its history, capturing the position of the stars for a single, luminous moment in their long journey. This realization that the cosmos is a place of constant, majestic change paved the way for an even deeper question, one that would require a new kind of vision to answer, a vision that could measure the depth of the sky itself. These meticulous star catalogues of the 18th and 19th centuries were far more than simple lists. they were the first ambitious attempts to measure the depth of space itself. Astronomers began to realize that knowing a star's position on the two-dimensional dome of the sky was not enough. They needed to know how far away it was. The man who would make the first great leap into this third dimension was William Herschel, a German-born musician who turned to astronomy with the passion of a true amateur. With his sister Caroline as his dedicated assistant, Herschel embarked on a systematic survey of the entire heavens, using a series of ever larger homemade telescopes. His method was breathtakingly simple in concept and Herculean in execution. He would sweep the sky night after night, cataloging every star, cluster, and patch of nebulosity he could see. He was not just counting points of light, he was trying to gauge their distribution in space. To do this, he developed a technique he called star gauging. He would count the number of stars visible in his telescope's field of view in different parts of the sky, reasoning that in directions where he saw more stars, the starry system must extend farther out. This was like standing in a forest and trying to map its size by counting trees in every direction. Through this grueling, lifelong effort, Herschel arrived at a revolutionary conclusion. He proposed that our sun was part of a vast, flattened, grindstone-shaped collection of stars, which we know as the Milky Way galaxy. He also turned his powerful telescopes on those mysterious, fuzzy nebulae. Some, he found, resolved into tight clusters of individual stars, but others remained stubbornly cloudy. He correctly speculated that these might be distant stellar systems, what we now call other galaxies, floating in the ocean of space far beyond our own. Herschel's work was a monumental shift, transforming the sky from a flat painting into a deep, three-dimensional realm filled with structure. Meanwhile, at the Bonn Observatory in Germany, a different kind of catalogue was taking shape, one defined by German precision and sheer scale. The Bonner Durchmusterung, or Bonn Survey, was the brainchild of Friedrich Wilhelm Argelander. His goal was to create a comprehensive catalogue of every star in the northern sky visible to the naked eye and through small telescopes, an astonishing 324,000 stars in total. Each star's position and brightness was meticulously recorded by teams of observers who spent years peering through telescopes, calling out coordinates and magnitudes for scribes to notate. This was astronomy as a marathon of human endurance, a project that relied on the sharp eyes and unwavering focus of its creators. The catalogue they produced was a monumental achievement, a standard reference for astronomers for generations, but it also highlighted the limits of the human eye. The solution to this problem would arrive not from a better telescope, but from a completely different technology, the photographic plate. When astronomers first began attaching cameras to their telescopes in the late 19th century, they unlocked a new era of objectivity and permanence. A single photographic exposure could capture thousands of fainter stars than the human eye could ever see, and it created a permanent record that could be measured and remeasured at leisure. The era of the lone observer straining through an eyepiece and frantically writing notes was gradually giving way to the era of the data analyst, carefully studying glass plates under measuring microscopes. As one historian of science notes, this transition marked the moment astronomy began its evolution from a positional science into the study of astrophysics. Astronomers were no longer merely charting where things were, they were beginning to ask what they were made of and how they worked. These great catalogues, from Herschel's grand vision to the Bonn Survey's meticulous count, provided the raw numerical material for this revolution. They were the foundational datasets that first allowed humanity to perceive the true scale of our cosmic neighborhood, transforming the flat celestial map into a chart of unimaginable depth and setting the stage for the discovery of our galaxy's true shape and our humble place within it. The human eye, for all its wonder, was a flawed and fleeting instrument. It grew tired, it was subjective, and its observations died with the observer. But in a Parisian laboratory in 1839, a new kind of eye was born, one that never blinked and never forgot. Just months after Louis Daguerre revealed his process, a physicist named John William Draper aimed a small telescope at the moon and exposed a silver-plated copper sheet for 20 minutes. The result was a ghostly, blotched image, the first daguerreotype of a celestial body. It was crude, but it was permanent. For the first time in history, starlight had been captured and made to etch its own portrait. This was the beginning of a revolution that would transform the sky from a spectacle into a database. The ultimate expression of this new ambition was the carte du ciel, the map of the sky. Launched in 1887, it was a monumental, international project involving observatories across the globe. Its goal was as simple as it was audacious: to photograph the entire heavens and create a complete catalogue of every star down to the 14th magnitude, a staggering 10 million stars or more. Each observatory was assigned a specific zone of the sky, and for decades, astronomers dedicated themselves to this single, colossal task. The work was grueling. They used wide-field telescopes designed as giant cameras, guiding them by hand for hours during long exposures to keep a single star perfectly centered as the Earth turned. A slight tremor, a passing cloud, or a moment of fatigue could ruin a plate and waste an entire night's work. The result was not a single map, but a library of glass. Each fragile plate was a negative, a permanent slice of the sky frozen in time, coated with a delicate emulsion of silver salts that held the light of thousands of stars. But capturing the image was only the first step. The real labor began in the measuring rooms, where teams of human computers, often women like those at the Harvard College Observatory, would pore over the plates with magnifying glasses and measuring microscopes. They would carefully note the position and brightness of every single star, translating points of light into numbers on a chart. This was celestial cartography as industrial process, a factory line of discovery. The power of this new immortal eye was its ruthless objectivity and its ability to compare. By placing a plate taken one night next to a plate of the same patch of sky taken weeks or years later, astronomers could now see change. A faint point of light that had moved between exposures revealed a new asteroid. A star that flickered in brightness from one plate to the next was identified as a variable star. And those faint, smudgy patches that Sir William Herschel had wondered about, the nebulae, could now be studied in minute detail. Photography did more than just map where things were, it began to reveal what they were made of. By placing a prism in front of the telescope, astronomers could take a photograph of a star's spectrum, the unique barcode of light that reveals its chemical composition. Suddenly, the cold, distant points of light became physical objects with known temperatures, elements, and velocities. The sky was no longer a flat tapestry, but a deep, three-dimensional realm filled with diverse and dynamic objects. The glass plate turned the cosmos into a searchable, analyzable archive, a permanent legacy of light that would allow future generations to ask questions we had not yet even learned to form. The glass plates of the carte du ciel captured a sky frozen in time, but the universe was secretly in motion on a scale no one had yet dreamed. This hidden reality was finally measured from the chill, thin air of Mount Wilson, where Edwin Hubble peered through the most powerful telescope of its age and saw the cosmos begin to run. His target was the faint, spiraling smudge known as the Andromeda Nebula. Astronomers were bitterly divided. Was it a nearby cloud of gas within our own Milky Way, or an island universe of its own, impossibly far away? Hubble needed a cosmic yardstick, and he found it in a special class of stars known as Cepheid variables. These are pulsating stars whose intrinsic brightness is locked in a precise relationship with their pulse rate. A Cepheid that takes 40 days to brighten and dim is always exactly the same true brightness as every other 40-day Cepheid. By measuring how long its cycle took, Hubble could calculate its true power. Then, by comparing that known brilliance to its faint, observed appearance in his telescope, he could work out its exact distance. It was like knowing the wattage of a light bulb and using its dimness to gauge how far away it must be. When he found Cepheids in Andromeda, the calculation was unequivocal. The nebula was nearly 1 million light-years away, far beyond the known borders of our galaxy. The universe, in that single observation, exploded in size. Our Milky Way was not the entire cosmos, but merely one galaxy among countless others. Hubble had given us a new map of the heavens, one of unimaginable vastness. But his next discovery was even more profound. He began to study the light from these distant galaxies, splitting it into spectra to see its unique color signature. He found that the light from almost every galaxy was shifted toward the red end of the spectrum. This redshift was a familiar phenomenon, a Doppler effect for light. Just as the pitch of a train's whistle drops as it moves away from you, the light from a receding object is stretched, making it appear redder. The staggering implication was that galaxies were fleeing from us. And the most shocking pattern emerged when he plotted their flight. The farther away a galaxy was, the faster it was receding. A galaxy twice as far was moving away twice as fast. This was the redshift-distance relationship, the first direct evidence that the fabric of space itself is stretching. Hubble's own words from his landmark paper capture the quiet awe of the finding. The data indicate a linear correlation between distances and velocities. A linear correlation. This simple, elegant equation described a universe in a state of uniform expansion. If you could run the film backward, every galaxy would rush toward every other, implying a moment of incredible density and temperature a beginning. This was the first observational clue for what would become known as the Big Bang Theory. The final prop had been kicked out from under our cosmic centrality. Not only was our planet not the center of the solar system, and our sun not the center of the galaxy, but our galaxy held no special place either. Every point in the expanding cosmos sees every other point rushing away, a universe with no center at all. The ultimate map of the unknown had revealed a cosmos born from a single, fiery event, forever growing into a cold and silent future. The universe suddenly began to whisper. In 1931, a young radio engineer named Carl Jansky was investigating the source of static that plagued transatlantic telephone calls for Bell Labs. He built a strange, merry-go-round-like antenna he called his Jansky rotor, and with it he tracked down most of the interference to local thunderstorms. But one faint, persistent hiss remained, a steady sizzle that slid across the sky each day. Jansky meticulously traced its origin not to the Earth or the Sun, but to the very center of our Milky Way galaxy. He had accidentally discovered that the cosmos was broadcasting on a frequency the human eye could never see. This was the birth of radio astronomy, a new sense for humanity that would finally allow us to map the invisible sky. Jansky's rotor was just the beginning. The true potential of this new vision was unlocked by another amateur, Grote Reber, who built the first dedicated radio telescope in his own backyard in Illinois. It was a parabolic dish, a giant ear 9 meters across, tuned to listen to the galaxy. With this homemade instrument, Reber produced the first crude radio maps of the Milky Way, confirming that the center of our galaxy was a brilliant, roaring radio source. These pioneers revealed that the serene, star-studded sky of the optical telescopes was merely the quiet surface of a much deeper, more turbulent ocean of energy. The universe was not silent, it was a symphony of radio waves, and we had only just begun to hear the opening notes. One of the most profound discoveries made by this new sense was the ability to map the ghostly backbone of our galaxy, its spiral arms. This was accomplished not by looking at stars, but by listening to the faint, specific song of hydrogen gas. Neutral hydrogen atoms in the cold, dark space between stars occasionally flip their magnetic orientation, emitting a whisper of radio energy at a precise wavelength of 21 centimeters. This hydrogen line became a universal beacon, because these radio waves pierce through the cosmic dust that blinds optical telescopes. Astronomers could use them to trace the distribution of hydrogen gas across the galaxy. By measuring the slight shift in the 21-centimeter line caused by the Doppler effect, they could even calculate how fast different clouds of gas were moving. It was like having a sonar for the galaxy. This data allowed astronomers to finally draw an accurate map of the Milky Way's spiral structure, revealing our sun's position in a quiet suburban arm, far from the bustling galactic core. The need for sharper radio vision led to another revolution in technique: interferometry. A single radio dish, no matter how large, produces a blurry image. But by combining the signals from multiple dishes spread over a great distance, engineers could mimic the resolution of a single, impossibly large telescope. The farther apart the dishes, the finer the detail they could see. This is the principle behind vast arrays like the Very Large Array in New Mexico, where 27 white dishes move in unison across railroad tracks, their combined gaze creating a virtual telescope miles wide. Interferometry transformed radio maps from fuzzy blobs into exquisitely detailed portraits of cosmic violence. It was this powerful new vision that soon revealed two of the universe's most bizarre and energetic objects. In 1967, a graduate student named Jocelyn Bell Burnell was analyzing data from a radio telescope designed to study quasars when she noticed a tiny, repeating signal, a pulse so regular it seemed artificial. It ticked with a precision of 1 part in 10 million, arriving every 1.337 seconds. She and her supervisor half-joked that they had discovered a beacon from an extraterrestrial civilization, dubbing the source LGM for Little Green Men. But soon they found more of these pulsing radio sources, which became known as pulsars. We now understand pulsars to be the rapidly spinning, ultra-dense cores of exploded stars, neutron stars. As they spin, they beam out intense radiation from their magnetic poles like a cosmic lighthouse. Each pulse is a revolution, the heartbeat of a stellar corpse. At the same time, radio astronomers were puzzling over other strange objects that looked like faint stars in visible light, but produced stupendous amounts of radio energy. These were quasars, the most luminous objects in the universe. Interferometry finally pinpointed their incredible nature. They are the impossibly bright cores of distant galaxies, powered by supermassive black holes feasting on surrounding matter. A single quasar can outshine 1,000 galaxies, its energy roaring across the radio spectrum. With radio eyes, we could now map the aftermath of stellar explosions in pulsars and witness the cosmic engines of entire galaxies in quasars. This new cartography of the invisible revealed a universe of constant, violent creation and destruction, a dynamic and energetic reality hidden just beneath the placid surface of the starry night. The glass plates of old observatories have been replaced by a new kind of eye, one that counts individual particles of light. This is the charge-coupled device, or CCD, the same silicon heart found in a digital camera, but chilled to near absolute zero and pointed at the deepest reaches of space. Where a photographic plate might capture only 2% of the light that fell upon it, a CCD can capture over 90%. This is not just an improvement, it is a revolution in sensitivity. Suddenly, the faintest whispers of the cosmos, light that had traveled for billions of years, could be registered and stored not as a chemical smudge on glass, but as a precise number in a digital file. Every photon of light becomes a data point, and the sky is transformed into a river of pure information. This new fire hose of data demanded a new kind of observatory, one without a single eyepiece. Projects like the Sloan Digital Sky Survey began to automate the entire process. A dedicated telescope, programmed like a machine in a factory, would scan a predetermined strip of the heavens night after night. Its CCD cameras would systematically photograph the same areas in 5 different colors of light, from ultraviolet to near-infrared. This industrial-scale astronomy has now digitally mapped over 1/3 of the entire sky, cataloging not thousands, not millions, but hundreds of millions of celestial objects from nearby asteroids to the farthest quasars. Each point of light is processed, its position, brightness, and color measured with robotic precision, creating a census of the cosmos on a scale that would have been unimaginable to any astronomer peering through an eyepiece just a generation ago. But what do you do with a universe of data? The answer was to build a new kind of map, one made not of paper but of servers and code. This vast digital tapestry is stored, processed, and made accessible to anyone in the world with an internet connection. Online platforms like the World Wide Telescope or Aladdin Sky Atlas are virtual planetariums that allow you to fly through this data universe. You can zoom from a view of the entire Milky Way down to the faint glow of a single, distant galaxy, all from your laptop. This has utterly democratized the science. A professional researcher in Tokyo and a curious student in Buenos Aires now have the same access to the exact same celestial data. The map of the sky is no longer locked in an ivory tower. It is a public utility, a shared digital commons for all of humanity. This accessibility has unleashed a new force in discovery, the power of the crowd. With so much data, professional astronomers could never hope to examine every strange galaxy or variable star themselves, so they turned to the public, creating projects like Galaxy Zoo. Volunteers, ordinary people with no scientific training, were shown images of galaxies and asked simple questions. Is it smooth or does it have spiral arms? Is it round or edge-on? The human brain's incredible pattern recognition skills, something computers still struggle with, began to find the unusual. And they found them in droves. Citizen scientists have discovered a whole new class of green, pea-shaped galaxies, identified gravitational lenses, and helped classify millions of celestial objects. A retired schoolteacher in England or a nurse in Ohio can now look at a galaxy that no human eye has ever seen before and help write its entry in the cosmic catalogue. We are now living in the era of data-driven cosmology. The map of the universe is no longer a static image, but a living, searchable database that is constantly being updated and cross-referenced. Astronomers can now ask questions of the entire sky at once, mining this digital universe for correlations and patterns that were invisible before. They can search for all stars of a certain color or track the subtle flickers of millions of stars to find distant planets. This is astronomy without a specific target, where the most profound discoveries often emerge from the patterns in the data itself. The night sky, once a scroll of myth and mystery, has been translated into a language of ones and zeros, a dynamic and ever-expanding atlas that promises to reveal the universe's deepest secrets not just to a chosen few, but to anyone who cares to look. The final frontier of mapping is no longer a matter of distance, but of perception. We are learning to see the universe not just with light, but with gravity itself. Our newest maps are drawn from the shudders of space-time, the ripples we call gravitational waves. When two black holes spiral into a final, violent embrace, they do not emit light, but they shake the very fabric of the cosmos. Sensitive instruments like LIGO and Virgo act as celestial seismographs, feeling these tremors that have traveled for billions of years. A single chirp, a fleeting signal in the data, translates into a map of a colossal collision, giving us the masses of the invisible objects and the location of an event we could never hope to see. This is cartography of the utterly dark. At the same time, we are building maps from ghostly particles called neutrinos. Trillions pass through your body every second, completely unnoticed. These are the silent byproducts of the universe's most powerful engines, from the core of our own sun to the explosive deaths of massive stars. Immense detectors buried deep in Antarctic ice, like the Ice Cube Observatory, wait for the rare occasion a neutrino interacts with matter. When it does, it points a finger back to its source, allowing us to chart the hidden nuclear furnaces that power the cosmos. We are no longer just sketching the outlines of the universe. We are taking its temperature and listening to its heartbeat. This new era of multi-messenger astronomy is like assembling a puzzle using touch, sound, and sight simultaneously. The gold standard was a landmark event in 2017. A gravitational wave signal arrived, heralding the collision of two neutron stars. Seconds later, gamma-ray telescopes saw a flash from the same patch of sky. Traditional telescopes then swiveled to that point, witnessing the resulting kilonova explosion and confirming it forged heavy elements like gold and platinum. For the first time, a single cosmic catastrophe was mapped with every sense at our disposal, creating a complete, multi-dimensional portrait of a distant cataclysm. The flood of data is about to become a deluge. The Vera C. Rubin Observatory, with its enormous mirror and massive digital camera, will photograph the entire visible sky every few nights, creating a dynamic, cinematic map of the heavens. It will catalog billions of galaxies and watch for anything that moves, blinks, or changes, generating more data in its first year than in the entire history of astronomy. Meanwhile, the James Webb Space Telescope acts as a celestial chemist. Its infrared eyes peer through cosmic dust to directly image young planets and analyze the atmospheres of distant worlds. It takes spectra of alien sunsets, searching for the chemical fingerprints of water vapor, methane, and even potential biosignatures. We are progressing from simply mapping where exoplanets are to mapping what they are made of and what conditions exist on their surfaces. The future star chart will be a living, multi-layered digital entity. It will not only show you the position of a star, but also the invisible planets orbiting it, the gravitational waves pulsing from its direction, and the neutrino flux from its core. The challenge is no longer gathering the light, but teaching machines to find the stories within the endless streams of ones and zeros. We are building an atlas that encompasses all the fundamental forces and particles, a complete guide to a universe that is far stranger, more dynamic, and more interconnected than our ancestors, who first looked up in wonder, could have ever possibly imagined. From the notches on the Ishango bone to the digital data streams of the Sloan survey, the human drive to map the heavens tells our deepest story. This was never a simple act of navigation, but a profound conversation with the cosmos, a dialogue that began with starlight and necessity and evolved into a quest for our own origins. We first painted stories on the darkness, connecting celestial patterns to the rhythms of the earth, finding our way across trackless deserts and uncharted oceans. We then measured the sky with geometry and mathematics, building models to predict the motions of planets and the fate of kings. Every breakthrough, from the printed page to the photographic plate, from the telescope to the gravitational wave detector, has been a step in the same grand endeavor to reveal the unknown and chart our place within it. This story of celestial cartography is, in its heart, the story of human curiosity itself. It is the narrative of a species that cannot help but look up and ask where we are, where we came from, and if we are alone. The maps we have drawn, whether etched in stone, inked on vellum, or encoded in silicon, are more than just coordinates. They are the cumulative legacy of every human who ever gazed at the night sky in wonder. That legacy is now ours to carry forward. As you step outside and look up at the stars tonight, you are not just seeing points of light, you are reading the first map our species ever knew, a map that guided explorers, inspired poets, and gave birth to science. You are witnessing the same celestial landscape that whispered secrets to